So this weekend I took out the SLX Mgl as well as the standard SLX and the XT, as well as the CASITAS Mgl to do the big four-way battle to see which one casts a particular lure the farthest. Now, unfortunately, right in the middle of testing, it started raining and it wouldn't stop. So I had to pack everything up and go home, and pretty much wasted a couple of hours of testing and test results. But when I got home, I realized that the price for this SLX Mgl is a lot more than the standard SLX and even the SLX XT. Now on eBay, these are going for right around $170, while the XT is going for about $120, and then the regular SLX you're looking at $99, but there is a guy out there selling them for like $80 on eBay. So those other two reels are not even in the same price category as this Mgl. So I thought to myself, well, what reels out there are going to be direct competition for the Mgl in price and utility? Utility meaning a more finesse-oriented baitcaster. So after doing my research, checking the JDM market, the American market, I came up with two reels. Now the first reel is coming from DAIWA in the form of the TATULA SV. Now on eBay, this thing retails for the mid 160s, and this is, you know, the finesse version of the TATULA. But let's face it, this thing's not going to stand a chance. So we're going to put this off to the side. And it turns out the most direct competitor for the SLX Mgl is coming from Shimano's own house, and that is the Curado 70. So a subscriber actually commented in one of the videos that I should compare these two reels because they are very similar to each other, and I thought to myself, you know, no way, the Curado costs a lot more. But when I checked on eBay, the Curado is actually cheaper than the SLX by around $5 to $10. So price-wise, they're very close, but specification-wise, they're even closer. And let's go over that now. The first thing is that they are very close in size, and it's hard for me to tell which one is actually smaller than the other, but they are tiny. Probably some of the tiniest reels out on the market today. And they both have aluminum frames and graphite side plates. They have similar bearing counts. The Curado has 5+1 bearings, while of course this has 4+1. They both have the SBS Infinity externally adjustable brakes, and they both feature a 70 size spool capacity. So in fact, I'm going to see if that's true, and I'm going to take the line off of this Curado and spool it directly on the SLX to see if there's going to be any kind of excess line or excess spool left on the Mgl. Okay guys, so I have the reels all ready to go, and let's see if there's any kind of line capacity difference between the two despite them being both 70 size models. Now the spool on the SLX Mgl is 1mm wider, and we won't get to see any depth difference unless I take the line off of both these spools, which I'll show you guys here after we do this little test. Okay, now the line didn't spool evenly, but as you can see, it fills up the Mgl spool to capacity, coming straight off the Curado. So they are virtually the same line capacity. Okay, so now that we've shown you guys they have equal line capacity, let's see what the reels and the spools weigh. Okay, so first up is going to be the SLX Mgl, at 6.9 ounces. And I'm pretty sure the 70 weighs less than that at 6.6 ounces. So this does weigh a little bit less, and you can kind of feel the difference when you're picking them up one after the other. Okay, so moment of truth, we're going to weigh these spools. And of course, one thing that the SLX has over the Curado is that the side plate is attached and spring loaded in case you needed to open it up to make any kind of internal brake adjustments. Well, of course, the Curado's is not. Okay, so let's take a look at these spools. And let's check out the spool depth. They look to be, kind of looks like the Curado has a slightly deeper spool to me. What do you guys think? Maybe just a little, or maybe just my eyes are playing tricks on me. But they are the same diameter, 32 millimeters. But the SLX features a 1 millimeter wider width. Hopefully you guys can see that there. But let's get these weights. Okay, the MGL's got that 13.2 gram spool, which I remember I was really disappointed in. But you can feel the difference in weight holding these two. The Curado's got a much heavier spool at 15.5, so over 2 grams difference between the two. And since they both have equal line capacity, that difference should stay once the spools are filled up with line. And of course, this is due to the fact that this is the MGL spool with the porting, while the Curado does not have any kind of aggressive porting. Now they both have S3D machining. So for those of you who own a Curado 70 and you're wondering if this MGL spool will fit in there as a possible upgrade, I'm afraid Shimano spoiled that notion, as that's as far as this MGL spool will go. It's a really tight fit. I can barely pull the spool out now. Hope I didn't damage anything. But if you can look at the spool shafts of the two, the MGL spool shaft is thicker and shorter, and it's also machined a little different as well. It's got this little step right here, while the Curado does not. So yeah, Shimano kind of spoiled that idea. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pick out a couple of lures to take out on the water to see if we can see any kind of difference in casting distance and feel. And I'm going to choose lures that are not too heavy, since these are finesse oriented. I'm probably going to just pick out like a 1/4 ounce and a 3/16 ounce lure. And I'm also going to pick out a lure that's got some resistance, because the Curado 70 has one thing that the SLX does not, and that's going to be X-ship. So I believe that's where that extra bearing comes from in the Curado, is it has an extra bearing supporting the pinion. So I'm also going to test out the cranking power, and luckily I have the same gear ratio for both reels, 8.2, and we're going to see what's what. So see you out on the water. Okay guys, I'm out here on the water doing the little cast comparison between the Shimano SLX Mgl and the Curado 70. Okay, so first up is going to be the SLX Mgl, of course. And I have all 4 brakes inside turned on. Spool tension set to minimize side-to-side play. External dial set to 6, and we're going to see what it does with pretty much the maximum brake setting. Okay, that went farther than I thought. There is a little bit of a backwind. Spool super controlled, as to be expected. Let's try again. It's probably going out there about 30 yards. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to back these brakes down as low as they'll go externally and see what kind of difference it's going to make in distance. So let's do one more with all the brakes on. Okay guys, I found out that the lowest I could go externally was in between 2 and 3, so roughly 2.5. And let me show you the distance now. So it gained probably about a good at least 10 foot, and one cast off camera almost went to the other side of that to the other side of the lake there with a good backwind. So let's try again. Oh shit. Yep, that almost went to the other side of the lake. It almost hit the other bank, probably short by about 10 foot or less. The spool is definitely faster. Oh shoot, I almost hit the trees over there. But yeah, a couple more casts so I can get a good mental picture of how far this thing is casting, where it's landing, before we try out that Curado 70. Damn, it almost hit the other side. Probably short by about 5 foot. Okay, one more cast. Okay, that was short probably by about 10 foot. So now let's try out that Curado 70, see if we see any kind of difference. Okay guys, Curado 70 time, and I have to see how many brakes are on. That means I'm having to pull open the side plate, and as you can see, it's not connected like on the SLX. But all 4 brakes are on. Side to side play minimized. External dial on. Let's go to 6. Okay, here we go. Shit. That looks like it probably went a little further than that SLX Mgl with all the brakes turned up. Let's try one more time. Yeah, it looks to me that the Curado 70 is casting a little farther with all 4 brakes on. Now, if you see different, let me know in the comments. It's probably going out there about 35 yards. Okay, so I'm going to back these brakes down now and see how low I can go. Okay, so just like the SLX Mgl, the lowest I could go externally was right around 2.5 before the spool would blow up. And let's see the results. Shit, that went to the other side of the lake. It almost hit the rocks on the other side of the bank. And yeah, so it looks like, at least with this weight, the Curado 70 is outcasting that SLX Mgl. Let's give it one more shot. Okay, it was pretty short that time, but the first cast, it was literally 2 feet from the other side. We're gonna give it one more cast. Okay, so that was about a less than 10 foot from the other side, so they cast about the same, but that one cast from the Curado 70, the first one you saw, definitely almost hit the other side of the bank by like 2 feet. So the Curado 70, what is this going on? 3 years old now, still showing us that it can still hang with the best. Okay, so now that we know that the Curado 70 and the Slx Mgl are pretty much even in terms of casting that Gunfish 95, which is about 3/8 of an ounce, let's see what it can do with the lighter lure. This is the Gunfish 75, and this weighs 3/16 of an ounce, or it's supposed to. So these rods that they're on are rated from 1/4 ounce to 3/4 of an ounce. So a lot of this is going to be pretty much down to the reel itself when it comes to castability, because as you can see, the rod is not even bending, it's not even loading up this little lure. So let's see what happens. So I'm going to play it safe and turn all the brakes up on the Mgl. Let's see what happens. All right, wow, that went out pretty far. That probably went about 25 yards so far, pretty easily. All right, let's do one more. Spool pretty controlled. Now the Mgl is very smooth on the retrieve. Feels really, really rigid. Okay, let's start backing these brakes down now. Okay, so the lowest I could go is 3 on the external dial before it would blow up. So let's see how far it casts now. Okay, so it went out there a little farther, not too much farther though. Probably added another 10 foot tops. And you can see the spool was fluffing up there in the middle. Let's try a couple more. Okay, so you saw that fluff up happen towards the tail end of the cast, probably the last half. So to cure that, I'm going to turn the external dial up to 3.5 from 3. Let's see if it cures that fluff up. Yep, sure did. So it turns out probably 3 is probably the lowest I could really go on this Mgl, and this little lure is going out there probably a good 30 yards. Okay, one more cast and then we'll try that Curado 70. Okay guys, I have the 70 and I got the brakes turned all the way up, and hopefully this lure will let us see if there's any kind of real casting difference between these two because of the spool weight differences. Okay, so let's see what happens. Okay, handled it no problem, as expected. Probably went out there about 80 feet. All right, consistently hitting around the same distance. One more cast. Now put a little bit more effort into that one, but the distance was the same. Okay, let's back these brakes down. Okay guys, now I was actually able to go down to 2 on the Curado 70, and let me show you what happened. Pow. It looks to me like that was outcasting that SLX Mgl. I'll have to review the footage when I get home, but the spool was still pretty controlled. Yeah, that is definitely outcasting that MGL, probably by a good 10 foot. So very, very surprising. Now, does this mean that the SLX Mgl sucks at casting? No, it just means that this Curado 70 is still a beast. All right, one more time. Okay, had to overrun there, but yeah, Curado 70 equaling the SLX Mgl, and actually, in my opinion, it was beating it, casting the lighter lure. So we have another MGL reel from Shimano Japan that didn't meet my expectations, just like the Scorpion MGL. Okay, one last cast. Yeah, that's going out there probably 35 yards. Okay, so far this SLX Mgl is kind of reminding me a lot of the Scorpion MGL. When I brought the Scorpion out to battle the Curado K, I saw literally no difference in performance in casting. But there's something about that test that I didn't tell you guys, and that was the pitching between the Scorpion and the Curado. And it turns out that the Scorpion pitched a little bit easier and a little bit farther than the Curado K. And I'm going to see if that's the case with the SLX using a weightless 5-inch Senko. And I think this might be a more important test because, to be honest, most guys are going to use reels like this with the really shallow spools to do mostly pitching of weightless plastics. So we're going to see if we can see any kind of distance difference between the two, and I'm going to see if there's any kind of effort difference between the two. All right, so I'm going to turn the brakes all the way up to maximum. All right, so that's going out there probably about 25 foot. And one thing I'm noticing about this SLX is when the thumb bar is depressed, there is a little slop or movement. And this is the first Shimano that I've had that has that, and that's kind of disappointing. Okay, I'm trying to keep a mental picture of where these pitches are landing. Probably about 30 foot out there. Spool is really controlled unless my thumb's too slow. So I'm gonna back these brakes down, see how low I can go, see if we can get more distance and less effort. Okay, so 2 3/4 is about the lowest I can go while pitching without having to thumb the spool during the pitch. So let's see what these pitches look like. Distance is probably about 5 foot farther. I really can't get any more distance without, you know, just tossing this up in the air. And this rod here, it is so unbalanced and heavy. You can really tell the difference going from this rod to, let's say, like an X-Pride or something lighter. All right, I'm trying to keep a mental picture of where these pitches are landing. A couple of more. And I'm still having to thumb the spool a little bit as well on some of these pitches. Okay, so I've turned the brakes all the way up to 3 to try to solve those overruns. Looks like the distance went down a little, but of course, it's hard to be super consistent pitching sometimes as far as the effort, but it's going around the same spot. That was a little short, but it definitely cured the overrun. Going to 3. Okay, let's try out that Curado. Okay, so up next, Curado 70. Have all the brakes turned to maximum, and let's see what happens. Okay, hitting the same spot consistently. The brakes sound a little different than the MGL. Okay, so very, very consistent, hitting literally the same spot every time. So let's back these brakes down. Okay guys, so the lowest I could go externally was 2, and let's see what happens. Okay, that went out there kind of far, but the trajectory was kind of high. Now, in my opinion, the purpose of pitching is to keep a low trajectory so that the lure enters the water quieter than it would normally. So if you have a really high trajectory and you got more distance and the lure just splashes really loud, it kind of defeats the purpose, in my opinion. All right, looks about the same to me. Doesn't look like it's pitching any further or any shorter than the Slx Mgl. Effort, I don't see any kind of difference. Maybe it's a little bit easier on the MGL to get that distance, but yeah, overall you're looking at reels that are very, very equal in casting and pitching performance. So I'm not sure where that extra 2+ grams of spool weight advantage is going on that SLX. Crap, I blew it up. All right guys, I'm gonna take it back home. Okay, so back from the water, and one thing that I didn't get to do was to compare the power of these two reels. Now normally I would use a big double-bladed spinnerbait and see which one of the reels would pull that lure through the water the easiest, but for some reason I couldn't find any of mine. I don't know where my spinnerbaits went. So that being said, when it came to smoothness and refinement when turning the handle out there, the edge definitely is going to go to the Slx Mgl. And I say the edge goes to the SLX, but in reality it's much better than the Curado 70. And I attribute that to 2 things. Now the first thing is the handle and knob tolerance. There is no wiggle or slop in the handle or the knobs. It's very tight. And the fact that the knobs are bigger than on the Curado, so there's a lot more meat, and it definitely shields you from any kind of small vibrations better. So I don't know if all Curado 70s are like this or if it's just mine, but the handle and particularly the knobs are really, really loose and sloppy on this reel. I don't know if you'll be able to pick it up, but there's some in and out movement and up and down movement. And that goes for both knobs. And when you're really turning this handle fast to burn the lure in, you can definitely feel the knobs wiggling and hitting up against the handle. So it definitely needs some bearings in these knobs to tighten that up. But then again, the SLX Mgl doesn't have bearings either. It's just poor quality control from Shimano on this particular reel. Okay, so let's talk about the important stuff, and that of course is the casting and pitching. Now ultimately, these two reels perform pretty much evenly when it comes to casting and pitching. Now in your hands they may perform a little different, but out on the water it seemed to me that the Curado 70 had a slight advantage in casting, especially with that 3/16 ounce topwater lure. It was definitely casting that farther, which was surprising. But the MGL pitched a little bit easier. Now pitching distance was about the same, there was no difference, but the MGL started up a little bit easier when pitching that Senko. So that's kind of disappointing that the SLX doesn't cast and pitch better than the Curado, but then again the Curado is more expensive, allegedly, when it comes to MSRP. But I think also the SLX needs a little bit more breaking in. Now I remember when I first got my Shimano CASITAS, I really wasn't thrilled with the casting, but then the more I used it, the better that reel casted, and now that reel is a monster. So that might be what the SLX Mgl needs, is just more fishing and casting time. But that being said, when it comes to these two reels, if I had to spend my money, it is going to go to the Curado. And I say the Curado because I like the way it palms better. Now both of them palm really comfortable. They're both super tiny. But I like the contours of the Curado 70 better for the way that I palm. And for the small price difference between the two, I probably pick up some bearings and just put them in the knobs, or just swap the handle out completely. Because a lot of people think that the Curado 70 doesn't have power, and that's absolutely untrue. It's just that these tiny knobs and this handle doesn't transmit your cranking power as efficiently. So if you swapped this handle and knobs for, let's say, Curado K handle and knobs, you'll see just how powerful the Curado 70 really is. Okay, so kind of disappointing for the MGL that it did not beat the Curado 70, but I still say this is a top performer because, you know, casting and pitching equal to the Curado 70 is nothing to be ashamed about, because the Curado 70 is a monster. So next up, hopefully, is this weekend I'll be able to take the 3 SLX reels out and do the field battle, see which one casts the farthest, or will that CASITAS MGL just dominate them all? Okay guys, thanks a lot.